Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, we are putting a Schefflera cutting into the terracotta pot. So one of my favorite images over at my mother and father-in-law's house is the Schefflera in the corner of their living room. The window faces west. And so when the sun is setting in the west, the sun shines through in the evening, those twilight hours, and it has usually a nice reflection, and it casts shadows on the branches and the leaves of the Schefflera that's getting really, really big, and all the Schefflera leaves you can see silhouetted on the wall. It's really cool. I love going over there and seeing that. And that Schefflera is getting huge. So I keep looking at that Schefflera and wondering, maybe a cutting someday. Well, sure enough, my mother-in-law took a cutting of the Schefflera, put it in some water, and one of the last times I was over there, she showed it to me. She said, "Dave, the roots are there. You want this?" And I said, "I'll think about that." For some reason, I've always been shying away from Schefflera, but been more and more interested in the last couple of years. Watching Nigel Saunders' Schefflera grow, it's been getting more and more interesting. And then this past Labor Day weekend, the State Fair of Minnesota goes through Labor Day weekend, and the Minnesota Bonsai Show that happens that last Saturday of the State Fair, that Saturday Bonsai Show, one of our members who's been a member of Minnesota Bonsai Society for 50 years, he's been there since the beginning, and Ken's Schefflera was on display, and that Schefflera was 40 years in the making, and the trunk was getting thicker. It was kind of a clump style, and then the branches and the leaves were just shooting out real nice. And I was sitting there as a volunteer at that show this past September, and I was watching people go by and looking at that, and we were talking about the trees and talking about bonsai, and I think I got a little hooked. I said, you know, I might need a Schefflera soon, and so I'm getting the Schefflera from my mother-in-law. It's right over here in the bucket of water. So she just brought it over here in the last week, and I'm going to put it into this pot. I believe it's a big enough pot. So we got a nice little drain hole in the bottom of that. We'll go ahead and get a screen in there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put some of the bigger soil on the bottom for some good drainage. There we go. That might be a little too much actually. I want this thing to go pretty much down to the bottom because it's a tall piece of root growth, and I want to keep all the roots if possible. So let's go ahead and remove my little contraption that held it up so the leaves wouldn't be soaked in the water. And here we go. Here is the Schefflera. Right here, got this new young growth since the roots have been developing. This thing has been trying to grow right here. We've got all of these roots in the bottom here now. So we've got plenty of roots. Now, I'm going to take this top one off, I do believe. Let me see where it goes down. You get tangled up with a lot of these roots. There's a lot of roots in here. Maybe I can see if that'll survive. I'm not going to cut any roots, I don't think. I'm just going to put it in the bonsai pot. This will be a real straightforward planting, except for I will have to have something to hold it down, some rocks of some sort. In the soil we can mound up here, but there's going to be a little bit of this root above the soil line, but I'm okay because I'll put some sphagnum moss in there and we'll continue to promote this root growth. Now I do have this root right here growing up. I'm going to try to bend this down a little bit. Yeah, we'll get these growing down. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of that coarse sand in there, or bonsai soil, just a little bit. And then we're going to go, and we're going to use the smaller soil next. So this is one of my buckets of recycled bonsai soil, stuff that's not broken down too much. And this will do a nice job of letting moisture go on through. There's a little bit of organic material in here from some decomposed materials, leaves and such. And I don't want to damage these roots, so I'm not going to tamp this down too much. These are fine particles that went in and around. Holding the tree up, I'm actually surprised it's holding it up so nice. But that's because I think the fine particle of soil here. And if I turn this around so you can see this now better without the leaves, there's the exposed roots. So I'm gonna go ahead, when it's in a good bonsai pot someday, we're not gonna have the soil mounded this high, but for this potting right here, we're gonna get this soil nice and high so these roots, they all have tips down below, so I'll put some sphagnum moss around here so we don't lose that root. This root probably will come off, but I just wanna make sure that this grows and is gonna stay good throughout the transplant here into some bonsai soil. So I don't wanna cut any roots off just to be safe. Let's just get a little bit more. There we go. Now we're starting to spill all over the turntable. There. So I'm gonna get some water real quick and then we'll put some sphagnum moss around the top of that. So here we go. We'll just get some water in there. We wanna make sure that all that bonsai soil kind of settles in there. We keep all those roots nice and watered down. They've been in water for a good couple of months. Okay, we got a jungle in here. So my sphagnum moss is long and stringy. It's got some of these big old dry branches in here and such. I'm not gonna make real fine particles on this time. I'm gonna go ahead and leave this a little bit longer and leggier sphagnum moss, just so it can wrap around this root structure. Give it some of its air still. And so I don't make a mess, I have my sprayer here. I'm gonna get some of this good and wet. And we'll wrap that around the base. So this is gonna protect that top layer of root here from drying out. It's gonna have moisture from the sphagnum moss. And it'll promote some more root growth. And then if we have to lower this into a pot, we'll take a peek at it in the course of the next several weeks and months. And we'll see how this thing survives this repot. And because it is so big, we are going to trim it back, and I think I'm going to put some of the cuttings into some more water, and I'll have some more Schefflera for the future. So here's my long and leggier sphagnum moss. Again, I didn't make this into a finer particle. I'm just going to lay this up on top, almost like I'm air layering up here. But instead of wrapping it with plastic, we're just going to go ahead and make sure that we're misting this thing every day. We're watering the sphagnum moss portion of this every day, and so this stays really nice and moist. There we go. And now you can't see any of the white part of the roots sticking out. Everything looks pretty good in its place. So let's give it another little water here. Start leaking through the bottom there. Here we go. Probably one of my quickest repots I have done in a long, long time. But there we have a Schefflera that has a really nice trunk already. So we got this root off to the side, which will probably come off, or it can remain as an aerial root possibly in the design of the tree. And I've got an aerial root before I even have it in a bonsai pot. So this is really young new growth right here, so we'll just leave that on and see if it maintains. But you can see the tree is bending off this way to your left, my right, and then it kind of swoops back up this way. If I were to cut the tree right here and have this become the main branch, we'd have a swoop in this tree right off the get-go. I don't know if I'm going to cut it there though this first time, because again, I want this to survive. I've never done a Schefflera cutting, so this is new for me, but I believe if I cut it up in here somewhere, I'll be able to stick this back into some water. So I think I think right there is a possibility, right there. So I can take this and I can cut off the bottom leaf, the next leaf, and I can put this into some water. I can maybe even cut this bottom one off right here and keep these two as the leaves. Let's do that. And let's just see. This will be my first experiment with Schefflera. I don't even know if these, maybe if I put these in water, those will root. I can try that as well. But here we have a pretty thick root here with a couple of the old internodes here and a couple of leaves up here, so branches rather. And we'll put that into some water, probably into one of my water bottles. I'll put it in there and we'll keep it up by the window so it gets lots of light. And then, because this is an experiment for me, and for those of you who have a lot of experience with Schefflera, shoot me some messages. Will these root? Let's put them in water and test them, and we can see. So now I have this mounded up tree, which looks kind of fun. Not a bonsai pot per se, it's a good training pot. A lot of people use some of these terracotta pots with the painted rim up here. And what I've learned about the reason for the paint on the outside here but not here is the terracotta pots, if they're well-made pots and pots that people are using for bonsai, what I've learned about them is that this will have more air exchange, but this part won't. So the top part that has a little less air exchange, and it holds the moisture more on top, so it won't dry out as fast, but down here it allows some more oxygen to get into the pot, and so we have a better exchange of air and water through the roots of your system. So this is going to keep some moisture up top. The sphagnum moss will keep the moisture up top, and we'll keep those roots alive, keep this aerial root going. And then we've got this tree with who knows what this is going to be, and we got a little wiggle to the tree. So far there's some wiggle up to right here. This becomes the new apex for right now. But I think I'm gonna have to go back and watch a ton of Nigel Saunders Schefflera videos, and I'll get some good schooling, because I really love his tree. His big clump style Schefflera, I believe, is one of my favorites to watch. So we'll go back and look at that. Now I do notice some scars on the leaves here. I have to joke or laugh a little bit about that. My cat, I have a plant room for a reason. I have cats and they love the leaves of any trees, and so they came in here, and this one was completely annihilated by the cat. I think one already came off. So this leaf is just kind of chewed up. This leaf is kind of chewed up, and this leaf the cat got to. So I cut those off right there. So there I have my Schefflera. I have one end branch growing on the inside of a curve here. I'm just going to peel that off. And again, I've got this new one here. I don't think I'm going to do anything else to this tree. I like this branch out here as a potential primary branch down the road. If this one doesn't take off, we might cut the tree off right here and let it continue to grow. I see new buds already forming on this tree. Look at this, right here. There's a bud right there. There's some other potential buds coming up in the back you can't see here, but right here is a beautiful one right here. This will be a branch someday if this transplant is successful. This transplant might hinder this bud, but there's a bud right there, so we have every other tree right there. And there's all kinds of other places here, dormant buds that could pop. This will be a fun experiment. I'm super excited now to have my very first Schefflera. So we'll put this on the benches, get it a lot of light, and we're gonna hope for the best. So I have a water bottle here full of water. I can put that right in there, and it's getting plenty of water, a good 3-4 inches down. I have all my other cuttings too, and I'm wondering if they can just go into the same one, or would it be too crowded out? Maybe I can just put 2 of them in there. So there we go. We have some Schefflera in water. We'll make sure that stays up tight, put it by a window, and maybe that'll become future bonsai trees as well. New experiment for me. The Schefflera is new for me. So again, if you have any comments, let me know. Put them in your comments, and yeah, help me get success with the Schefflera. Let's get this by the window. My first update for today is the bonsai pot tank. A close-up now of the fish down there swimming at the bottom center of the tank. Now today, notice the rock on the right has some green on it, but there's also some rock still left on there. And then the rock on the left, the 2 rocks on the left actually, have a lot of moss on there. So one of the drawbacks of having such a powerful light for the bonsai trees to grow is that's too much light for a fish tank or fish pond, and so you're going to get a lot of algae growth. Now I was concerned about this. I was getting a little bit worried about this, and then all of a sudden this last week I had a lot of growth. It just exploded, and so I actually scrubbed the rocks on the right hand side, and I haven't scrubbed the rocks on the left hand side, just as a demonstration. I also took out the branch, the dead tree, and I scrubbed that as well. It was green and stuff hanging from it. So a lot of algae growth that I'll have to probably clean out about once or twice a month, probably once every couple of weeks if I want to keep it viewable. It was getting pretty green and more dingy, but as you add water and do some water changes and take care of some of that algae. Now I do have a couple of shrimp that were in there when we first started the tank, and the update on that is I have not seen a shrimp in over 2 weeks. So I don't know if they're hiding in the crevices underneath the rocks and they only come out at night, but all I generally see are all those ember tetras down there in the middle of the tank. But they seem to be loving life. Now in regards to the trees for the pot, the trees on the left are doing really quite nice. Everything has survived. The front tree is getting a lot of little leaves here, so I think there's new growth. The one in the back that was wilting is doing okay. It's got some new small growth up on top as well. The trees off to the side, you know, slow but sure, they're getting acclimated to this new environment, and they seem to now start to be taking hold. I did tell you before on the show that when the waterfall is running, this side seems to have a little water that kind of triples up in here, and this side can stay really wet. So I turn this off most of the time and put the hose in just the back side when nobody's down here looking at it. But of course when I'm down here working and hanging out, I like to put it on the waterfall section, and then we have a real pretty scene. And then this side dries out the fastest still, and the back tree is doing really well. That one seems to like life. The 5 grove tree there is doing pretty well. The front one has been a little bit sparse. We've had leaves fall off. That one's stressed out just a little bit. So we're gonna have to figure out if that tree's gonna make it. We're taking good care of it, I hope, and we're gonna see. We might have to do a transplant early on. But the bonsai pot tank overall is doing well. That is a very powerful grow light, so we're gonna have to keep track of that algae growth, and we're gonna have to keep track of all these trees, especially this front right one. My second update for today is the variegated Benjamina. So the Benjamina forest, I really hacked back a couple of months ago, and to be honest, after I hacked it back and I put this video out there, I was very nervous about what was going to happen. Of all the ficuses that I work on, the Benjamina variety, and I'm not 100% this is a Benjamina, but I'm fairly confident it was one of those assorted bonsai labels at a big box store. So we made some big cuts, and I was a little nervous. But here it is a couple months out, and everything's doing okay. And we have all kinds of little tiny growth. There's some tiny growth up here. There's some growth back in here, some small leaves, and these have gotten bigger. There's a little tiny leaf right here and a little one right here that's pretty new since I cut. Back here there's a couple of small leaves. There's small leaves over here on this back section. Yeah, so a lot of this actually is some new growth. And doing quite well. So I think it'll just keep growing here in the plant room, and then we take it outside in the summertime, late spring, early summer, and start to get some full sun on this thing. Hopefully we'll get massive growth, and we can make some summertime trims to promote where the back budding is going to happen. For example, I'll show you right here, this is new growth. Since the cut, this is new growth, but look at where that's growing. It's growing in the inside curve of this big branch that has a little bit of new growth in life up here, but it's kind of struggling a little bit. This is growing out at a 90-degree angle from this trunk, so we couldn't cut all this back and hope this would become the new leader, because it would just look a little odd. This is a great big wound up here, so we'll see. We'll probably cut that out, but I'm leaving it right now, so it just keeps growing in the plant room and replenishes the roots down below. I'll swing it around here a little bit for you and show you from this side, which again might be the front. I keep getting confused on this forest, but I suppose this would be the front. We lost a tree back here, so now you're not seeing the cuts as much. This is a little bit in our face on this side for the front, but again, we made a major chop right here, and so we've got some growth. The front tree is alive, got a little tiny growth down here, super cute. Down here, this one's still alive, and of course that back tree that we just spun around is got some new growth as well. This is a new branch that I might have just damaged right there. I did. I went too fast, so that was all new growth. There you go. There's some little new growth for you. I still have got that was actually growing the crack of 2 leaves, so now it actually just pruned itself accidentally, but it'll be okay. We've got 3 branches in this area. We can choose the best 2. That's in the background anyway. But yeah, all of this spindly growth here, it is a little spindly down in the plant room, but growing nonetheless. And this summer, this will go poof and become a great big forest again. So the update on the variegated Ficus. My final update for today is actually an introduction. About 6 years ago or so, when I was first getting into bonsai, I saw a video out there in the YouTube world about an avocado bonsai. And so I thought, what the heck? And even back then, when I hardly knew much about bonsai, I was just experimenting with whatever I could experiment with, mainly because it was free. And so I have avocado in my smoothie every single morning. And so I learned online how to propagate a bonsai out of a seed from an avocado. So you take toothpicks and shove them into the pointy part of the avocado seed, and you leave the flat side in the bottom, and you dunk it in water and put it by the window. And lo and behold, after a few weeks of sitting in there with the window, if you can see at the very bottom of that avocado seed that's cracked open, that first root is coming through. So my update to myself is that about 2 months in, maybe a month and a half in, I've got a nice roots structure happening at the bottom of that. So when that gets more roots, there'll be more roots, and they'll get long into the pot. When I feel it's safe enough for me to repot, like the Schefflera earlier today, I'll be able to put this seed right into the soil. But I won't do that until the top pops open and there's actually branches growing out of the top. So the roots will continue to grow down below, and then the bottom will eventually pop a little bit, and you'll have this new growth, kind of like when you were young and experimented on those beans in school. I remember we always planted beans because they grew fast, and you had the seed, and all of a sudden that one popped up. That's what's going to happen right here. I have done it once, but that first one died, and a couple of months back I said, you know what, I want to try an avocado again. So the experiments continue. So there's the introduction / update of the avocado seed. It has cracked open, the roots are starting to go out there, and we're going to see if we can get ourselves an avocado tree. Yeah, in Minnesota. Kind of strange. We'll have to protect it in the winter for sure. That is going to do it for another edition of Dave's Bonsai. Thank you so much for checking it out. And we've got the Schefflera here on the bench. I did put a recycled black little tiny pot, little plastic pot, to hold this branch out to the left and see if it grows up that way, because it was so hugging that branch. So I'm kind of giving it a little guidance here with this black pot here. With the back window, I don't know how easy that is to see, but there's a little tiny black plastic pot. You could put a cork from a wine bottle in there and kind of do that. I have some corks, I might replace it with that. But this right now is working, and we have the potted Schefflera. Hopefully the roots are going to take, and we're going to have a nice tree in the future. I'm really excited about the Schefflera, and a big old thanks to my mother-in-law Sue for providing the seed, if you will, for a new plant. In this case, a rooted cutting. Yeah, you know what I all mean. Hey, take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and we're going to catch you all very, very soon.